So we're going to explain a little bit about one problem of philosophy, about reality and metaphysics. It's called the ship of Theseus paradox. And here is the issue. There was a story told about this guy Theseus, and he was a hero. But here is the story, if it pops up in a second, as it was related by, the Greek legend, is reported by this historian Plutarch. The ship wherein Theseus and the youth of Athens returned from Crete had 30 oars and was preserved by Athenians down even to the time of Demetrius Phalereus, or something like that, for they took away the old planks as they decayed, putting in new and stronger timber in their place, insomuch that this ship became a standing example among philosophers for the logical question of things that grow. One side holding that the ship remained the same, the other side contending that it was not the same. Here's the story. There was this guy Theseus, and the legend had it, the myth had it, that he was sent over to Crete. There was this creature, the Minotaur, I believe it was called, that required a sacrifice. Otherwise, something terrible would happen in Athens. So Theseus was sent over. I think they had to sacrifice some children over there. And Theseus goes there. He slays this evil monster. And he comes back, and everybody rejoices. And the idea is they put this ship that took him there and back on display. It was kind of a museum piece. Kind of like if you guys go to the Museum of Natural History, you see the dinosaurs over there. Or if you go to Washington, D.C., there's the Air and Space Museum. You see actual capsules that went into space. Or even if you go to the Intrepid in Manhattan, you'll see you'll see some airplanes. I think actually one of the space shuttles is now on the Intrepid, or it's on its way there. Well, they did the same thing back in ancient Greece, but here was the deal. They put this boat on display, and what happens to a boat? You guys been to the South Sea Streetport? You see the old ships? Wood starts rotting. So what they did is they took away the old planks and they put new wood in its place. Well, that's okay. That's just fine. What is the problem? What are philosophers worried about? Well, ask yourself the following question. They have this ship of Theseus on display, and they take one of its parts, one of its planks, one of its pieces of wood, and they take it away and they replace it. Is it the same ship? Everybody thinks, yeah, it's probably the same ship. Okay, if you replace two planks, is it the same ship? Yeah, if you replace a rope here, is it still the same ship? But now the question is, you start replacing more and more. At what point, if you've replaced half of the parts, is it still the same thing? Is it still that same ship? And finally, 75%? 85%, 95%. How many parts? What percentage of the parts do you have to replace before it's no longer the same thing? Now notice, the ship exists. It's a real thing. It has reality, if we want to say it in a kind of a funny sort of way. Let's see if I can get... The ship's made up of parts, the boards. So the question is, how many replacement parts does the ship lose? Or excuse me, how many replacement parts get replaced, get put in, and the ship is no longer the same thing? Think of it. Suppose you guys have a car, and you get a really bad flat tire. You replace the tire. Is it the same car? You're not going to have to go to the Department of Motor Vehicles and re-register it, right? Or if some part breaks, say you need a new spark plug, or you replace the oil. Is it a new car? No. If you replace a part, is it a new car? Well, the question is, what is this thing that is the car? It seems it's just not made up of the individual parts, that this car is something over and above the parts, the same way the ship of Theseus is over above the part. Now, we could debate for hours, and some people say 75, some people say 50. The question is, why do you do it? And is there something more? Is the ship more than the sum of all of the parts? Is that the reality of the ship? The question of metaphysics. And you say, big deal. We have a practical way of dealing with it, etc. Okay. From a practical standpoint, we deal with cars every day. The Department of Motor Vehicles can take care of it. Not an issue. Same thing with your house. If you replace, you own a house, you replace one of the windows. You don't have to go and get a new deed for the house because it's a different house. But now, let me tell you why, and I call this the ship of Theseus paradox number 2. Sometimes I call it the philosopher of Theseus paradox 2. And watch this one. Well, it looks like I have the order out of order. Give me a second as it pops up. Okay, here we have 3 entities. Number 1, 1-year-old baby. 2, 21-year-old guy, about your age. 3, 56-year-old guy. I guess that guy looks a little bit, I hope he looks a little bit heavier than me, even though that is my Kingsborough ID picture that I scanned in. And those are all pictures of me. Okay, well, that 1-year-old baby doesn't have a single component that 21-year-old had, right? Every molecule in the body is changed. Every atom in the body is changed, right? I mean, there's some issues about brains. They don't change. Not sure. It seems reasonable to think that everything's changed. You've grown. I mean, the baby, I'm not a giant now, 5'8", but when I was 1 year old, I was a heck of a lot smaller. Notice the 21-year-old has hair. The 56-year-old, well, I guess there are a few on top, but I think it's fair to say is bald. Is the 56-year-old the same as the 20-year-old, the same as the 1-year-old? Or is it a different person now? So I wake up in the morning, I'm a different person. I wake up in the morning and I run off with one of my young, beautiful female students and leave my wife. She's got nothing to complain about because I'm the new guy. I never agreed to be married to her. She does it to me, same thing. Or even think of it this way. You're going to decide to jump off the roof. Why not? Because you're going to be a different person by the time you land. So what do you care if something is painful later on? Is that still you? Well, you think it does. It makes there's something a little bit different about it. That is, you think you're the same person. For example, if I go to the bank and I take out a loan for a lot of money, give them my house as collateral, take out a whole bunch of money. Then they come back to me the next day and say, hey, look, pay back the loan, you owe us interest. And I say, what are you talking about? I didn't do that. That was somebody else. Well, the question is, what is this entity, the person, the thing? What is the real thing? How do we understand it? And that's just one of the paradoxes that comes up in metaphysics. And in a second, we'll turn to another one. This ship of Theseus, we're not going to be dealing with directly, but the next one is one that we will be talking about directly.